Morning, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Ramblings of a Grumpy Old Man. So, a few little housekeeping things. I noticed in editing yesterday of yesterday's video where I decided to tell everybody that I was going to run for Congress in 2026, that at the end of that video, I say, because I want to vote the way I want to vote. Now, I said it, and it's what I meant, but as I got to thinking about it, I was like, that could be taken out of context. So I'm here today because I want to clarify what was meant. What was meant was, if we go before that, it's talking about not taking money from political parties such as Republicans and Democrats, because then you're beholden to them, much like we have going on right now. And with the whole budget and the government shutdown looming, because as we all know, our former president wants to allow the government to shut down just so he can get this portion of this bill passed to make it illegal for illegal aliens to vote, which I don't know if you've noticed, but that's already a thing now. I don't really want to get into that right now because it's a longer topic than I think this video is going to be today. So let's stay on topic and stay with what I meant. I want to vote the way my constituents want me to vote. I just don't want to be beholden again to vote the way any specific party says, hey, you got to vote a party lines. Well, no, I don't, because I'm not taking any of your money. As I said yesterday, I have ideas and things that kind of border both sides. That's why we chose independent, because I don't want to have that label as, oh, you're a Democrat, but you're voting for gun, you're voting against gun reform, or, you're a Republican, and, you know, it's just asinine. I don't think the people want their politicians to vote based off of how much money they can put in their pocket. To say I'm not doing this for financial gain would be a lie, because congressmen do get paid. So, is there some little bit of that? Sure, um, but that's not the main purpose. So, with that cleared up, today's polls, if you believe in polls, which in the last couple election cycles, the polls haven't been even batting 500. So I don't really have a whole lot of faith in polls because, as I've stated in previous videos, nobody's called me. So it's a pretty large sampling, I think. And I also think that maybe pollsters, depending on who they are, call people based off of the way they think they're going to answer. But I will say that it's looking good for Kamala Harris. Keep it up, Wisconsin. Keep it up, Pennsylvania. Keep it up, Michigan. North Carolina, time to get on board. Georgia, you guys too. Get out there, knock on doors. Um, this this can't stand. We can't let this man back in office. We can't do it. I'm sure that there are people out there that don't agree with me. I know there are. I have friends that don't agree with me. So if you sit and look, you know, again, back to yesterday's video, political rhetoric has got to stop. Both sides. Again, um, we've heard enough about Donald Trump being a threat to democracy. And for me, I honestly feel that way. And I feel like people like me are out there that are going to vote based on the way they feel the country should go. And that's pretty much what everybody I suggest should do is vote for the politician that you feel has your best interest in mind. Now, few things. Fed cut the interest rate by half a percentage point yesterday. Now, the Fed chairman himself said the economy's in good shape. Now we need to work on unemployment. Unemployment's 4.4%. During the pandemic, it was much higher. 15, 14, 15%, somewhere in that area. And I've said this and said this and said this, that people need to take into consideration that that time was unprecedented. So for either party or either side to claim that one side had worst unemployment in history and other side brought back more jobs than any other president, like my Hershey mug. So it's just not true. The jobs were gonna come back after the pandemic once everybody was assured that it was safe to go back to work. Nobody wanted to be that company to be like, oh, I sent my people back to work and then everybody got COVID and died. Yeah, they did. But, I know that there are people out there that don't believe that like COVID vaccines were a good thing. I worked with the public, and I worked for a major corporation that financially incentivized getting COVID vaccine. Yes. Now, would I have gotten the COVID vaccine without being financially incentivized? Yeah, I would have. The company giving me extra money for getting vaccinated, that was just a plus. However, I have people close to me. My partner did not get vaccinated. Uh, Also works with the public. She didn't get vaccinated and continued to work. And to this day, never got COVID. So we count ourselves lucky there. So we're one of those split houses that, you know, did my getting the COVID vaccine keep me from getting COVID? I don't know. Personally, I believe that I actually had COVID and it was going around our business before it actually came out on the news and became a thing. So, for people to say that ground zero for COVID was a nursing home in Washington, that's the first case where we knew what it was. I spent several days, January of that year, sick. Finally had to go to the doctor just to find out what was going on. And the doctors told me that I didn't have the flu, I didn't have bronchitis, but I had something and they didn't know what it was. So I spent about the next 2 months getting over it. I continued to work, just under a lot of stress, but it's kind of hard to work walking around huge stores taking care of what you're supposed to be taking care of when you can't breathe. Um, so, COVID vaccines being a thing, I just thought it was a way of looking out for people around me. There were a lot of people that were upset over that. And, that's okay. Like I said, my partner didn't take the vaccine and she's alive and well and doing great. I'm upright and vertical. Um, but I think that our former president saying the things he said during the worst pandemic in history or in 100 years. Let's go with that. Let's not say in history because I haven't been alive since history started. So, of the things I know, worst pandemic in 100 years. And the American people came together and, we got over it. You may wonder why I'm talking about this today, 3-4 years later. Well, because let's think about our political discourse as a pandemic. Or, okay, pandemic, probably the wrong word. Epidemic. Although there's a lot of political discourse all around the world, we're going to focus on political discourse in the United States. So we're going to call the political discourse an epidemic. Again, Vice President Harris, more than brings us together than divides us. We've just got to find those common grounds. And everybody, all the polls that I don't necessarily adhere to say that the American people are more worried about the economy. And right now, with the Fed cutting half a percentage point, I don't care what Donald Trump says. Because right after they did it, he announced, wow, then the economy must be in really bad shape. Although all economists say that the economy is in really good shape. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I live in an area of Virginia where gas is under $3 a gallon and coming down. So obviously, you know, the economy is on the way, I will say, to getting back to normal. Now, when I was in school and we took classes that we had to learn about how things work, I came to an understanding that this is okay. This is going to be directed directly at anybody that is a supporter of the former president. You're making claims that the economy is in terrible shape due to policies enacted under Biden and Harris. However, history shows and policies show, and any anything you can use to judge things on shows that generally speaking, policies enacted by a sitting president generally don't start showing up until 3 to 4 years. To use a line from Ronald Reagan, it is the epitome of trickle down economics. Trickle down economics. The people at the top make more money, so they pay their workers more, and it just trickles down all the way. So, with that thought, president enacts a policy. Policy has to have time to show true representation of what that policy has done. That doesn't happen immediately. So, we are 3.5 years into Biden and Harris being in office. And our economy is starting to straighten up. I think most of you people with some common sense can see where I'm going with this. If it takes 3 to 4 years for the general American people to see the reflex of policies enacted, then we are now starting to see policies changes that were enacted by Biden and Harris when they first got into office. The 3 years prior to this, we were still reeling from policies enacted by Donald Trump when he first went into office and right up until he left office. It's not that hard, people. So, again, common sense Common sense tells you that, okay, president has enacted this policy, and 3 months later, prices went through the roof. If you truly believe that policies enacted today will be reflected in your bottom line at your household 3 months down the road, you need to do your research. It takes a while. Tax cuts went in. That is one policy that you can see directly. You know, Trump had the biggest tax cuts. Yes, there was a influx to the economy for a while when he first got into office, and people were happy. Oh, I'm seeing more money. Then Trump starts enacting tariffs, and people wonder why 3 years later inflation's at 14%. For Trump to sit here and tell you that enacting tariffs did not cause inflation and that he was making the other companies, the manufacturing companies, and the countries that were importing from, pay those tariffs. It's sleight of hand, is what it is. Companies pay those tariffs, but then they raise the cost of the goods, the amount of those tariffs, to the corporations that are selling those goods. The price of those goods costs the corporation more. Corporation has to make more money on those goods, so the corporation raises the prices to pay for the increase from the manufacturer, who had to increase the price because it cost them more to put the product on the shelves in the United States. So the bottom line of all of this is the consumer ends up paying those tariffs. That's how business works. So when former president sits here and says that we're going to have 200% tariffs on cars coming in from Mexico. Okay. So what does that do to the end consumer? Obviously, the end consumer pays 200% more for those automobiles made in Mexico, not the company that's making them. So, if you're for Donald Trump tariffs, quit bitching about inflation. Pretty simple. I mention that because it's a prime example of Donald Trump enacting tariffs 2 years into his presidency and inflation hitting an all-time high at the beginning of Biden's presidency. Now, did Biden leave some of those tariffs in place? Yep. Should he? One can argue yes and one can argue no. Now, do know that I do understand in Donald Trump's simple mind how he thinks the American people think that tariffs work. I'm going to raise more money and pay off the national debt. Well, yeah, but your American people in the downstream are the ones that are paying off the national debt. maybe a better way to pay off national debt is to quit spending so much damn money. Um, we have causes that we spend money on that, you know, maybe we shouldn't spend so much money on. One of the things that Donald Trump said was, NATO, you got to pay your fair share. This is one of those times where I firmly agree to a point. Um, if you are in an alliance such as NATO and you have agreed to the terms and conditions, the most lied to question on the internet, I agree to the terms and conditions, but you never read it, then you need to abide by that. Now, does that mean that if you're not meeting those goals because maybe you're a foreign country and your economy is taking a hit like the United States' economy, and you can't afford to really pay that electric bill, you can't put 3% into your military spending. Does that mean that we need to turn our back on you? No, I don't think so. But you do need to catch it up. You do need to keep the lights on. So I think that going forward in this campaign, I'm probably going to get a lot of questions. And I hope that I can answer everybody's questions. I will try to the best of my ability to have answers ready. If I don't have an answer for you on a question you asked, then I will do my absolute best to figure out that answer, to get the information. So Biden and Harris need to, back up. Biden just needs to hang out for a couple more months. Enjoy being a lame duck president. Thank you. I think Biden has been a wonderful president. I'm starting to see, the reflexive policies that he's put into place when he first got into office, and things are starting to look good. Now, the man's been in office pretty much as long as I've been alive. So, thank you for everything you've done. Enjoy retirement. And just know that at least in some people's minds, your presidency will go down in history as one of the best presidents. Joe, you're always going to have haters. Nothing we can do about that, man. Let that roll off your back like water off a duck's back. Ms. Harris, Madam President, if I may be so bold, you need to start doing, you need to start getting more information out to the American people. Doing rallies and going over pre rehearsed lines using a teleprompter, that's not helping you. We need to do town halls. You need to take questions from the voters. You need to do interviews. We need to be hearing more, about your policies. I'm hearing about, an opportunity economy. For example, $25,000 credit for first time home buyers. I love that idea. You know, that depending on the amount of the house you're buying, there's your down payment. Now, how are we as American people going to pay for that? How are you going to make that happen? If your idea is, I'm going to pay for the housing credit with the money that we're going to make from charging corporations 28% corporate tax, 25%, whatever you propose, somewhere in that area, then okay. I understand where the money's coming from. Do I think that the corporate tax needs to be 23, 28%, 25%? Sounds reasonable to me. I do believe that corporations need to be paying their fair share instead of getting huge tax breaks. You build a new building, you're getting a tax write-off for construction costs. Okay. But do corporations need to be paying 15% of their total profit? Um, I think, actually, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's 13% now, not 15. Um, remember that largest tax cut in history that Trump put in place? Yeah, that was a 13% corporate tax rate, lowered from 23%. Actually, I think I was right the first time with 15. I'll double check that, let you know in the next video. It's one of them. But that just meant that CEOs and upper level executives of corporations could put more money in their pockets. Now you factor in corporations raising prices above inflation level of 14, 15%. Oh, inflation's up 14%. We're going to raise the price of this good 30%. So now you're paying 14% in inflation and 15% greed. And Trump wants to put tariffs on everything that we bring into the country. His words, not mine, not making this up. You can look it up. He said, I will put tariffs on anything brought into the United States. Theory behind that. People get fed up with the prices being what they are. They decide that they can make the product cheaper. They start companies to make the product so that they can put it on the shelves at a cheaper rate than what we're bringing it into the country for. It's a great theory. Again, do you Trump voters think for 1 second that happens overnight? Do you think that people build manufacturing plants, hire people, create the product, build the plant, hire the people, ship it out, and all of this happens overnight? No. Nobody with any reasonable common sense thinks that is how things happen in this country. Again, it takes time. 3, 4 years? Sound familiar? So, you want to bring manufacturing back to the United States? You know, how do you do that? Well, obviously, you have to incentivize people building manufacturing in the United States. Now, bouncing around a little bit, but back to Harris and her corporate tax rate. If you set your corporate tax rate at such an area that, let's say we're at 25%, 28%. Yeah, corporations here, having to pay that higher tax. Then they find out if they move their business to India, then they have to pay, I don't know what the tax rate is in India. I'll look it up. Hypothetically speaking, let's just say that let's use 25% in America, and let's use 12.5% in India. If you own a company, where are you going to put your company? Now, the reason you started your company was to make money. So, common sense tells you that you're going to move that company to India because you're going to pay less taxes, and that's going to put more money in your pocket. So, what we have got to do as a people is get corporations back to thinking about their workers and worrying about their workers and worrying about the little people in America more than lining their pockets. And therein lies the dig. Because everybody wants more money, because with money comes power, and with power comes more money, and it's a vicious, vicious circle. I honestly don't know what the answer is. And I would love to sit here and tell you that I've got all these grandiose ideas of how to fix it. I don't. That's where I need your help. The little people, the people that are on the front lines, the people that are, having to, I'm going to go here, that are having to send the electric bill check to the gas company and the gas company check to the water. If you know what I'm talking about, you'll find the humor in it. I'm not going to ruin it for anybody. But it's, you got to figure it out. The American people are hurting. They can't afford to put food on the table. They can't afford to keep the lights on. And we, as a people, have got to stand up and say enough. We're tired of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer and the middle class shrinking. Um, so I'm going to wrap up today with this. Do your research. Find out what candidate best suits you and your economic situation. And find out what their policies are going to do to your bottom line. Talk to people. Educate people. Listen to people and get educated. Not everybody knows everything. A lot of us like to think we do. I learn new stuff every day. So, again, go do your research. Oh, one other thing. Yesterday was National Voter Registration Day. I missed that in the video, and I meant to mention it. So, go out, register to vote. And then once you do register to vote, don't forget that you registered to vote. Utilize that ability. Let your voice be heard. Because if you want to end war and stuff, you gotta learn to sing loud all the time so people can hear you. So I hope that if this video ever finds its way to the person that made that statement, that they don't mind me using it, because it's a pretty good statement. So in closing, do research on tariffs and how they affect the American economy, or any economy. It's not just the American economy. Tariffs in other countries work the same way. You know, and let's have a civil election, because the biggest thing that I'm afraid of right now is, regardless of which side wins, there's gonna be problems. So let's keep our heads about us and fight the good fight. And if you go out there at the end of the day and you're behind on the scoreboard, just remember that you did everything that you could do to keep it from happening. Don't be a sore loser, and respect the other side, because at the end of the day, we're all Americans, and we all have to live together. So unless you want other things to happen in this country, start respecting one another and respecting opinions. Because, as I've said many times, opinions are like buttholes. Everybody's got one. All of them are different, and some of them stink. But we are all entitled to our opinion. So, you guys have a great day. And remember, Dixon for Congress 2026.